It all started with a choice that broke my heart. My son chose to celebrate his wife's birthday instead of attending his mother's funeral. I couldn't believe it, years of guiding him, trying to teach him what matters, and this is what I get. I felt anger, hurt, and disappointment all at once. How could he put a party above family? And yet now he's knocking on my door begging for my help. The tension between us has been unbearable, and the air is heavy with everything left unsaid. Something tells me there's more to his actions than I know, and the truth might shock me completely. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Let me take you back to the night it all began. I stood there, staring at the freshly lowered coffin, feeling a weight in my chest heavier than I'd ever known. My wife Laura was gone. I had to say goodbye. But even as the tears burned my eyes, one thought kept gnawing at me. Where was my son Aaron? I scanned the narrow cemetery road again and again, hoping to see him coming around the bend. My heart ached with every passing minute. I kept telling myself he would arrive, that maybe he had been held up, that he'd somehow made it in time to say goodbye. But the truth hit me like a blow when I looked at the empty chair next to me. Aaron wasn't coming. The church bells tolled in the crisp autumn air, marking the solemn moment, and yet his seat remained vacant. I tried to focus on the faces around me, neighbors, friends, even some distant relatives, but their whispers cut deeper than any words I could speak. Poor man, abandoned by his own son. How could he let this happen? I could hear them, and each murmured comment felt like another nail in my heart. Finally someone approached me quietly, their expression hesitant. "Daniel, I heard Aaron went to Rachel's birthday party," they said softly. I felt my stomach twist. My own son had chosen a celebration over saying goodbye to his mother. The anger started as a flicker and grew into a fire I could barely control. How could he? How could he put a party before family, before the woman who gave him life? I clenched my fists, my knuckles white against the soil beneath my fingers. I wanted to scream at the injustice, at the cruelty, at the coldness that seemed to have replaced the boy I once knew. But I stayed silent, letting my grief and fury swirl inside me, contained for now, waiting for the right moment. I took a step back from the grave, wiping the wetness from my cheeks. I remembered Laura's gentle voice, always saying family is everything, Daniel. Never forget that. She had tried to instill in him the same values I cherished, yet now it seemed all of it had been thrown aside. My heart ached not just with loss, but with the sting of betrayal. The autumn wind whispered through the trees, carrying the fallen leaves across the graveyard. I closed my eyes and made a silent vow. I would find out why my son had turned so cold. I would understand what drove him to choose his wife's celebration over the very woman who had shaped his life. And I would do whatever it took to bring him back to the family he had abandoned, even if it meant facing truths that would shake me to my core. I took a deep breath, letting the chill settle over me, and stepped away from the grave. This was only the beginning. Something had changed in my son, something I didn't recognize, and if I was going to fix it, I had to act quickly, before the distance between us became permanent. As I walked back to my car, my mind raced with questions and a growing determination. Aaron had made his choice, but I wasn't ready to accept it as the final answer. The game had just begun, and I knew I had to uncover the truth, piece by piece, no matter how painful it would be. The cemetery fell silent behind me, the echo of the church bells fading, but the fire inside me burned brighter than ever. I would not let my family be torn apart, and I would not let my wife's memory be dishonored by betrayal. Something had to change, and I intended to make it happen. A few days had passed since Laura's funeral, but the emptiness inside me hadn't eased. If anything, it had grown heavier. I couldn't stop thinking about Aaron and why he hadn't come. I knew I had to confront him, to see for myself why my own son had chosen someone else over his mother's final goodbye. I drove up to Aaron's house, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The small driveway looked just like I remembered, and yet everything felt foreign. I took a deep breath, tried to steady myself, and knocked on the door. Aaron opened it, and I saw him for the first time in days. His eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or nervousness, but he quickly masked it with a defensive shrug. "Dad, I stayed because Rachel insisted," he said, almost too quickly, as if rehearsed. I stepped inside, heart hammering. "Aaron," I said softly, trying to keep my voice calm, "it was your mother. She deserved your goodbye." Rachel appeared from the kitchen, smiling that smug, knowing smile she always wore. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and casually said, "Well, priorities, Daniel. Sometimes you just have to know what matters more." Her words stung like a cold slap. I could see it now, how Rachel had been shaping Aaron's words, twisting them to make him defensive. She had him trained, just like a puppet, and I could feel the pull she had on him. Aaron avoided my gaze, looking down at his shoes as I spoke. "I'm not here to fight with you, Aaron," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger that simmered beneath the surface. "I just wanted you to understand what your mother meant to all of us. She loved you, she deserved better from you today." Aaron mumbled something, a half-hearted excuse, and I could tell he didn't even believe it himself. I watched as Rachel smirked, satisfied with the tension she had created. Her presence was a wedge between us, invisible but sharp. Every glance she gave was calculated, every word a subtle jab to remind both of us who controlled the situation. Before I left, I turned to Aaron one last time. "Think about what I said, son. I just want you to remember where you come from." Rachel's voice was quiet but dripping with venom as I opened the door to leave. "You're not part of his life anymore," she whispered. Her words hit me like a stone in my chest. It wasn't just that Aaron had chosen her over his mother, it was that she wanted me erased from his life completely. My own son, caught between loyalty and manipulation, had become a stranger. Driving home, I felt a mixture of grief and fury twisting inside me. How had it come to this? When did my son's heart become so clouded by someone else's influence? I knew I couldn't give up. I had to find out how deep her control went and why Aaron allowed it. Sitting alone in my study that evening, I replayed our conversation over and over. Aaron's hesitations, Rachel's smug glances, her whispered words at the door, all of it painted a picture I couldn't ignore. She wasn't just clever, she was ruthless, and if I didn't act carefully, I could lose my son forever. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples, and silently vowed that I would find the truth. Rachel may have thought she could erase me, but I was far from finished. I would uncover every lie, every manipulation, and bring Aaron back to the family he had abandoned, not with force but with the truth he could no longer deny. The night stretched on, but my resolve didn't waver. This was only the beginning, and I knew the next steps had to be calculated, deliberate. If I didn't act, Rachel would keep tightening her grip, and Aaron's heart would drift further away from me. I couldn't let that happen. Not now, not ever. After my visit with Aaron, the unease in my chest didn't fade. In fact, it grew heavier each day. The town seemed smaller somehow, every corner echoing with whispers I could barely ignore. People I had known for years began talking quietly, their eyes darting toward me as if expecting me to crumble. And then little bits of gossip started reaching me, whispers that Rachel wasn't just manipulating Aaron emotionally, she was pulling him into her family's business too. The idea made my stomach twist. My son, whom I had raised with care, was being guided into a world I barely recognized. A world ruled by someone else's rules, someone else's power. I had to understand what was happening. I decided to see Peter Lawson, my old friend and lawyer. Peter had been there for Laura and me through thick and thin. He knew the family, the town, and the legal landscape better than anyone. When I walked into his office, the familiar smell of old books and polished wood brought back memories of calmer days. "Daniel," Peter said, looking up from his paperwork, "you look troubled." "I am, Peter," I admitted, my voice tight. "Aaron, he's changing. He's letting Rachel control him, and now she's pushing him into her family's business. I need to know how far this goes." Peter leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I've seen it before," he said slowly. "Charles Hayes, Rachel's father, he's a shrewd man. He doesn't let anything happen by accident. If he's involved, then Aaron isn't making these decisions freely. He's being influenced. Every choice, every hesitation, it's guided by Charles." The words hit me like a cold wind. My own son, my Aaron, caught between family loyalty and manipulation. I remembered Laura's words, spoken softly in her last days, her hand gripping mine. Aaron must never forget his roots. No matter what, I swallowed hard. I had to find a way to reconnect with him, to remind him who he was and where he came from. That weekend, I called him. "Aaron," I said gently, "why don't we go fishing tomorrow? Just you and me, like we used to." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear the hesitation, the tension, and he answered, "I can't, Dad. Rachel's family needs me this weekend. Important meetings, plans. I'm sorry." I felt the familiar ache in my chest, the distance growing with every excuse, but something didn't feel right. The way Aaron spoke, the slight tremor in his voice, the way he avoided any longer silence, it wasn't just obedience, it was nervousness. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then I said softly, "Aaron, listen. I'm not asking for business decisions. I'm asking for my son, the boy who loved fishing, the one who laughed at the smallest things. I just want to be with him." There was nothing on the other end, except a sigh, quick and uneasy, before he ended the call. Later that day, walking through the town square, I noticed the subtle glances people threw my way. Some nodded politely, others whispered to their neighbors. I could feel their judgment, their pity. But it wasn't just the town that worried me, it was Aaron. Something was off, hidden beneath the surface of his words and actions. He wasn't telling me everything. That evening, I sat on Laura's old bench by the creek, thinking. Her wisdom, her courage, and her insistence on family echoed in my mind. I knew I had to be patient, careful. I had to find out what Aaron was hiding before I could reach him fully. The gap between us was widening, but I refused to let it become permanent. My son might be under Rachel's influence now, but deep inside, I believed he still had the heart I had raised. I just had to reach it. As the sun set and the shadows lengthened across the creek, I felt a knot of determination in my chest. I would uncover what Aaron was hiding, I would pierce through Rachel's control, and I would bring my son back to the family he almost forgot. But for now, the nervous glance Aaron had given me earlier that week haunted me. Something was lurking beneath his calm facade, a secret I had to uncover, and I knew that secret would change everything. A few days after that uneasy call with Aaron, I found myself at a social gathering hosted by Rachel's family. I told myself it was just a casual visit, a way to observe without being noticed. But as soon as I stepped inside the grand hall, my stomach tightened. The room was filled with polished people, laughing at carefully timed jokes, and every word seemed calculated. Charles Hayes, Rachel's father, held court at the center, his presence impossible to ignore. He raised his glass and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "It's all about shaping young men into leaders. That's what we do best in this family." His gaze swept the room, but I caught the way he looked at Aaron, expectant, commanding, evaluating. And there was Aaron, standing silently beside Charles, shoulders tense, eyes flicking toward me for just a fraction of a second, before he turned away. I felt a knot of anger in my chest. My son looked like a pawn, positioned by someone else's hands, trapped in someone else's game. Rachel was nearby, leaning slightly toward Diane Hayes, her mother. Diane smiled approvingly, saying, "I must say, Rachel has really civilized Aaron since their marriage. He's so composed now." I watched Aaron flinch at Rachel's cutting remark, a small, almost invisible shiver. It broke my heart. That pride he carried, all those years, the self-respect that had always defined him, was still there, but buried under the weight of obedience and fear. Rachel didn't notice me observing, of course. She laughed lightly at something Charles said, the sound sweet and careless, but every word she spoke seemed like a knife, disguised as a smile. My son tolerated it all, nodding, responding just enough to please them, while I could see the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to react, to push back, but he couldn't. I moved a little closer, pretending to admire the decorations, while my ears tuned in to every word Charles said. He leaned toward Diane, speaking quietly, so that only she and perhaps Rachel could hear. "Aaron must cut ties with his father completely. If he wants to survive in our world, Daniel Grayson has no place in his life." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. He wanted my son severed from me entirely. Not because of anything Aaron had done, but because I was inconvenient, because I represented loyalty, love, and family values that didn't fit into their plan. I felt a mix of rage and sorrow boiling inside me. Rage at Charles, who thought he could control my son like a puppet, and sorrow for Aaron, trapped in a gilded cage, his free will slowly being suffocated by manipulation and fear. I watched as Aaron smiled faintly at some joke from Rachel, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's when it struck me, he wasn't truly happy, he was performing. Every movement, every word, every glance carefully calculated to avoid punishment or disapproval. And Rachel, ever so subtly, reinforced it, with her light touches, her comments, her teasing laughter. I wanted to reach him, to pull him away from this suffocating world, but I knew I couldn't confront him here. Not yet. It would be too dangerous, too visible. Charles was already watching, already measuring my reactions. Any sign of anger or interference from me could push Aaron further into their control. As I left the gathering later that evening, my heart heavy, I realized how delicate the situation had become. My son's pride was wounded, his spirit trapped under the guise of obedience. And worse, Charles Hayes' plan was clearer than ever. Aaron Grayson had to be cut off from me completely, erased from his father's world. I clenched my fists, silently vowing to fight back, to find a way to reach him. No matter how deep Charles buried his influence, no matter how cleverly Rachel manipulated him, I wouldn't let my son be lost. But first I had to understand the full extent of their control, before it was too late. The cracks were already showing, small but dangerous, and I could feel that the next moves I made would determine whether my son would survive his marriage, or be lost to their world forever. I waited until the house was quiet, no Rachel hovering, no Charles lurking in the background. Just me and Aaron. I knew it was time to confront him, to get answers that had been buried under politeness and manipulation for far too long. Aaron, I said gently, keeping my voice steady, I need you to be honest with me. Tell me everything about Charles and what he's doing with you. Aaron looked down, shifting from one foot to the other, his hands fidgeted, a nervous habit he had since he was a boy. I could see the weight of fear pressing down on him. Dad, I don't know where to start, he murmured. You start with the truth, I replied firmly. No lies, no excuses. I need the real story. For a long moment he just stared at the floor. Then slowly the walls he had built around himself began to crumble. I owe him money, Dad, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Charles, he helped me cover some failed business debts before the wedding. My heart sank. I had suspected manipulation, but debt, that explained so much. The fear in Aaron's eyes, the way he had hesitated around Rachel, the constant pressure, it wasn't just marital obedience. It was control, legal and financial control. Debt? I echoed. Aaron, how much are we talking about? His hands trembled as he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. Numbers that could drown a man stared back at me. I recognized the scale immediately. This wasn't a small favor, this was a lifeline Charles had given in exchange for dominance. I didn't want to tell you, Aaron said, tears welling in his eyes. I thought, maybe I could handle it myself. But Rachel, she knows. She uses it to make sure I do what they want. Every decision, every word, I have to think about what will happen if I refuse. I felt a storm of emotions crash over me, anger first and foremost, anger at Charles for buying my son's obedience, anger at Rachel for using him like a tool. And yet, underneath it all there was pity. My son had been trapped, caught in a net of manipulation so tightly woven that he could barely breathe. Aaron, I said softly, stepping closer, you didn't choose her freely, you were bought, controlled, manipulated. And this debt, it's not your fault. He looked up at me, eyes wide, searching my face for judgment but finding only understanding. I wanted to make the right choice, he whispered. I wanted to honor Mom, to honor you. But every time I tried, Rachel and Charles, they cornered me. I didn't have a chance. I swallowed hard, forcing my anger down to focus on what mattered, my son, not my rage. You're not weak, Aaron. You've been surviving in a world designed to break you. That takes courage, even if it doesn't feel like it. He nodded, but the weight of guilt was still in his posture, slumped shoulders and downcast eyes. I wanted to reach out, to lift him from this trap, but I knew money alone wouldn't fix it. This was about truth, about exposing the web Charles had spun. And then it hit me, suddenly clear, chilling and infuriating. My son didn't simply choose Rachel over his family. He didn't abandon us out of selfishness or spite. He had been bought. Every word, every action, every avoidance, it had a price. And now, understanding that, I knew the fight ahead wouldn't just be for money or respect. It would be for Aaron's freedom. I clenched my fists silently, staring at him. "Aaron, we're going to fix this," I promised. "I'll make sure you're free from them, both Rachel and Charles, but first, I need you to be ready to face the truth." He swallowed hard, nodding. There was fear in his eyes. Yes, but also a spark of relief. Finally, someone knew, someone understood. And that spark, it was the beginning of the fight we would have to win together. Because now, more than ever, I knew the truth. Aaron hadn't chosen betrayal. He had been trapped, and it was my job to tear the trap apart. I sat in my living room, staring at the stack of bills Aaron had sent me. My hands shook slightly as I considered what to do. Could I really bail my son out of this mess? Could I give him money and make everything right again? Part of me wanted to, desperately, but another part knew it wouldn't solve the problem. It would only make him more dependent on Charles, more trapped by that man's control. I called Peter Lawson, my old friend and lawyer. His voice was calm but firm over the phone. "Daniel, if you give Aaron money now, you're feeding Charles's control. He'll tighten the leash even further. You have to think strategically." I clenched my fists. "I know, Peter. I hate seeing my boy like this. I want to protect him. I feel helpless." Peter's voice softened. "I get it. But sometimes protecting someone doesn't mean throwing money at the problem. It means giving them the truth, guiding them to see the manipulation themselves. That's how you break the cycle." I hung up the phone and felt torn. I needed to think. I decided to visit Laura's grave. Walking through the cemetery, the autumn leaves crunching beneath my shoes, I felt her absence more sharply than ever. Her gravestone was simple, but to me, it held the weight of everything she had been. I knelt down, my fingers brushing her name. "Laura," I whispered, "what would you want me to do? To save him with money, or to show him the truth?" Memories of her strength flooded me. Laura never gave in to manipulation. She never let anyone control her choices with fear or greed. I remembered how she faced challenges head-on, how she demanded honesty, even when it hurt. My chest tightened as I realized the answer. I couldn't make Aaron's life easy. I had to make him see the reality he was hiding from, the reality Charles had forced on him. When I got home, I set to work. I started digging into Charles's business empire. It was complicated, filled with layers of shell companies and transactions designed to hide his influence. I spent hours reading documents, making calls, following every lead. My heart raced as I uncovered patterns, whispers of fraud, and accounts that no ordinary person could access without knowing the right names. Aaron's debt wasn't just money, it was a cage. Charles had carefully constructed it so that Aaron's every move served him. Rachel had been his instrument, his obedient daughter, ensuring my son would never act freely. I felt a mix of anger and sorrow. Anger at Charles for building the trap, sorrow for Aaron for being caught in it. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of clarity. Money wouldn't free Aaron. The truth would, and if I played my cards right, I could finally help my son see the chains he didn't even realize were wrapped around him. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my tired eyes. The city outside was dark, but inside I felt a small flicker of determination. I would not let Charles win. I would not let Aaron's life be dictated by greed and manipulation. I owed it to Laura. I owed it to my son. And most of all, I owed it to myself to fight for what was right. I spent the next few days buried in papers, bills, contracts, transfer statements, everything I could get my hands on. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Charles Hayes wasn't just controlling Aaron's finances, he was laundering money through shell companies, hiding the truth behind legal facades that fooled most people. My anger simmered, but I had to stay calm. One wrong move, and everything could collapse. Peter Lawson came by my office. His face was serious, and I could tell he had already thought through every step. "Daniel, we have to be precise," he said. "We can't just go public yet. Charles has connections everywhere. If we make a mistake, it'll backfire." I nodded. I understand, Peter. But he can't keep doing this. Aaron's life. It's like he's trapped in someone else's plan. I won't let it continue. Together we mapped out a strategy. I would collect solid proof, documented facts, nothing vague, nothing emotional. This was about exposing Charles, not just complaining about him. I compiled the documents, copied bank statements, and highlighted suspicious transfers that only someone like Peter could interpret. Once everything was in order, I made an anonymous tip to the state investigators. I didn't want Aaron to know. I didn't want him to think I was trying to control him again. The truth had to work for him, not against him. But as soon as I took action, Aaron began to pull away. Every call ended abruptly. Every message went unanswered. When he finally spoke, his words cut sharper than I expected. "Dad, why are you stirring trouble again? Can't you just let it go?" It broke something inside me. I wanted to shout, to tell him the truth, to make him see how trapped he was. But I stayed silent, letting him speak his hurt and confusion. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Then there was Rachel. That woman had a way of slipping into every room and making her presence felt. At the grocery store, she caught my eye and smirked. "You'll never outsmart my father," she said, her tone mocking, venom laced in every word. My fists clenched, but I smiled politely. Inside, I was anything but calm. She didn't know that I wasn't trying to outsmart Charles. I was trying to bring him down, piece by piece, carefully and legally. I kept moving forward quietly, making calls late at night, cross-checking every lead. Every document I found felt like another piece of the puzzle snapping into place. Every transfer, every shell company, was proof that Charles's control over Aaron was more than manipulation, it was entrapment. Then the letter arrived. I saw it in the mailbox before opening it. The Hayes family crest on the envelope made my stomach twist. My hands shook as I tore it open. Charles was suing me for defamation. My heart sank. He was trying to intimidate me, to stop me before I could expose him. But something in me hardened at that moment. I read the accusations, lies, exaggerations, threats. His words were meant to scare me, to make me back down. But I knew better. I had proof. And I had Peter by my side. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about truth. Aaron deserved the truth. Laura would have wanted me to fight, even when the odds were against me. I folded the letter and set it on the desk. Outside, the evening sky was dark, but inside I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let Charles bully me into silence, not anymore. Aaron might still blame me. Rachel might mock me. But I had started the fight, and I wasn't stopping. I would continue, carefully, steadily, until my son was free, and the truth finally came to light. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension. I walked in, trying to keep my head high, but every eye seemed to weigh me down. Charles Hayes was already there, calm, smug, like a man who had never lost anything in his life. And Rachel, she sat beside him, a picture of innocence. Her smile carefully measured. The judge called the session to order, and I felt my stomach twist. Charles' lawyer stood, voice sharp and deliberate. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court, Mr. Daniel Grayson is a bitter old man, obsessed with controlling his son. His claims are nothing but jealousy, rooted in resentment." I froze for a moment. Bitter old man, obsessed, every word cut like a knife. I could feel the whispers of the jury, the rustle of papers, the weight of my own helplessness. Then Rachel took the stand. Her voice was smooth, practiced. "My husband, Aaron, has always been a good man. But his father cannot accept that he has a life outside his control. Daniel is obsessed. He cannot let go. He refuses to respect our choices." Aaron sat there, silent at first. I caught his eyes for a brief moment, hoping for understanding, but he looked away. My heart sank. My own son, my Aaron, was siding with them. It felt like the ground had opened beneath me. The town had come to watch. I knew the gossip would spread like wildfire. Already, I could hear snippets outside the courtroom, people calling me jealous, unstable, unable to let my son live his life. Every word stung worse than any courtroom attack. Peter leaned over, whispering in my ear, "Daniel, stay calm, this is just the surface. The real fight hasn't started yet. Patience, we have the proof. We just need the right moment. I closed my eyes for a second, picturing Laura's face. I thought about her courage, her unwavering sense of justice. She would have told me to endure this, to let the insults roll off my back while I gathered my strength. I straightened my shoulders. The day dragged on, and every question, every accusation, felt like a public trial of my very soul. I spoke only when necessary, keeping my words measured, my voice calm. Inside, I burned with the need to reveal the truth, to tear down the walls of lies Charles and Rachel had built around Aaron. Finally, as the court adjourned, I stepped outside, breathing in the cold air, trying to shake off the humiliation. That's when I noticed her, a woman standing at the edge of the steps, a folder clutched tightly in her hands. Her eyes met mine, urgency and fear mingled in her gaze. "I have proof against Charles," she said quietly, almost a whisper. "Everything you need to bring him down." I stared at her, my pulse quickening. Could this be the break I had been waiting for? After all the lies, all the manipulation, maybe, just maybe, help had arrived. I didn't ask her name yet. I didn't speak. I only nodded slightly, signaling that I would listen, that I would fight. For the first time all day, I felt a spark of hope. The shame of the courtroom was heavy, but it wasn't the end. The fight was far from over, and this mysterious woman, she might just be the key to freeing my son and exposing Charles Hayes once and for all. The woman stepped closer, her hand shaking slightly as she held a small folder. "Mr. Grayson?" she asked softly. Her voice was urgent, but careful. "I have information you need to see." I looked at her, wary but desperate for any clue that could help my son. "Who are you?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "Olivia Crane. I'm Rachel's cousin." The name hit me like a punch. Rachel had family watching my son, keeping him in a cage I hadn't fully understood until now. Olivia's eyes darted around the empty street. Rachel, she didn't marry Aaron for love, not for him. It was all Charles's plan, business strategy. They wanted control, influence, and Aaron was just a means to an end. I felt my chest tighten. My Aaron, my boy. He had been nothing but a pawn in their hands. Every birthday missed, every word of resentment, it suddenly made a twisted kind of sense. She handed me the folder, and inside were messages, texts, and emails. My hands trembled as I read Rachel calling Aaron a weak investment and discussing how to keep him compliant. The words burned. I could feel every insult, every manipulation aimed at my son. "He's not just under her thumb," Olivia said quietly. "He's trapped in their plan. And if Charles's latest business deal goes through, Rachel will cut him off completely. Aaron will have nothing." I wanted to yell, to shake Aaron and tell him he had been played, but Olivia's voice stopped me. "Daniel, there's more. I know because it almost happened to me. Rachel tried to push me into a similar arrangement once. I refused. She's ruthless. She does whatever it takes to get what her father wants." I sank onto the nearest bench, gripping my head in disbelief. My son's marriage, it wasn't love, it was control. Every time he chose her over me, over his mother's memory, it wasn't a choice, it was a trap. "Daniel," Olivia said, placing a hand on my shoulder, "you have to act carefully. He's vulnerable, but he's also still yours. If you move too fast, they'll see it and tighten their grip. But if you wait and plan, you can free him." I swallowed hard. Her words cut deep, but they also lit a fire inside me. The anger, the grief, the helplessness, all of it turned into determination. I had to save my son. I had to expose the lies. For the first time, I understood the full extent of the betrayal. My Aaron wasn't disloyal. He was trapped. And Rachel, she had been using him all along. Every smile, every sweet word, every claim of love, a calculated manipulation. Olivia looked me in the eyes, serious now. "One more thing. You need to know. Once Charles's deal is finalized, Aaron will be out of options. Rachel will leave him with nothing, and he'll have no one. You have to act before that happens." I nodded, my mind racing. I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief that someone finally told me the truth. Rage at the way my son had been manipulated, and my family's life twisted. I clenched the folder tightly, feeling the weight of what I now had. This was the missing piece. I had to be smart. I had to be careful. But most of all, I had to fight, for my son, for his freedom, and for justice. And in that moment I realized Aaron's marriage wasn't love, it was a battlefield, and I was ready to fight. I called Aaron over one afternoon. He came reluctantly, shoulders tight, eyes avoiding mine. I could feel the tension in the air. My son, my own blood, standing there like a stranger. "Aaron," I began, trying to keep my voice calm, "I need you to listen, just for a moment." He crossed his arms, defensive. "What is it, Dad? You already ruined my weekend with your guilt trip." I took a deep breath. "I'm not here to guilt you. I want to remind you of something Laura always said. She always believed family comes first, that respect and honesty matter more than anything else." Aaron shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, Dad, I know that." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "Do you, really? Or have you been blinded by someone who only sees you as a tool? Someone who uses you to get what they want?" His face hardened. "Are you talking about Rachel? You're jealous, Dad. You've always wanted to control me." I shook my head. "No, Aaron. This isn't jealousy, it's truth. Look, she smiles, she acts sweet, but have you ever stopped to think she might not see you as her husband? Only as a piece in her father's plan?" He looked away, jaw tight. My words were hitting a nerve. I could see the hesitation flicker in his eyes, the small crack forming in the armor he'd built for Rachel. I don't know what you mean," he muttered, trying to sound strong. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a few folded papers. "Aaron, these are copies of messages she sent, mocking you, laughing at your weaknesses. Read them." I didn't change a word. He stared at them but didn't take them. I placed them gently on the table. "I'm not asking for an argument, just think for yourself. See the truth before it's too late." Aaron sat there silent, torn. I could feel the doubt starting to grow inside him. It was subtle at first, a pause, a flicker in his eyes, but I knew the seeds were planted. He hesitated, then finally picked up the papers. I watched as his eyes scanned each line, his face slowly draining of color. Every mocking word, every sneer, every manipulation he hadn't noticed before, it all hit him at once. He started, but the words failed him. He couldn't speak. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the papers. I leaned back, keeping my voice calm. "Aaron, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But you have to see things clearly. You can't keep living in their lies." He looked up, his eyes haunted, searching mine for guidance. The boy I raised, my son, was finally seeing the truth, but it hurt him, and I could feel every ounce of his betrayal and confusion. I gave him a moment, letting the silence speak for itself. No argument, no insistence, just the truth laid bare. When I left, I could see him still sitting there, pale and shaking, staring at those messages. I knew in my heart that the walls around his mind were starting to crumble. He would question everything now, his marriage, his loyalty, the people he trusted. And for the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. My Aaron was beginning to think for himself again. The seeds of doubt were in, and soon, he would have to make a choice. I couldn't sleep that night. Something in my gut told me Aaron was struggling, but I didn't know just how deep it went. Then around midnight, my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen, and my chest tightened. "Dad," he whispered, voice shaking. Can I come home?" I took a deep breath, holding back my own relief. "Of course, Aaron, come over. We'll figure this out together." After I hung up, I replayed our last conversation in my mind. The texts, the messages, he had finally seen the truth, but the weight of it was crushing him. I could almost feel his confusion and shame from miles away. When Aaron arrived, his face was pale, his eyes darted around nervous, like a man caught between two worlds. He slammed the door behind him and sank into the chair, burying his face in his hands. "I confronted her, Dad," he muttered, voice breaking. "I showed her the texts, and she laughed. She said you made it all up, that I'm imagining things." I shook my head, my heart aching for my son. "Aaron, she's trying to gaslight you, to make you doubt your own judgment. But look at those messages, read them again. She has no love for you, only control." He closed his eyes and groaned. "I feel like such an idiot. I trusted her. I let her run my life, and Charles, he's just as bad. He keeps saying family loyalty matters more than my feelings. Like my happiness doesn't count. I pulled him close, feeling his body tremble against mine. Aaron, listen to me. Your happiness does count, and this isn't just about loyalty, it's about manipulation. Both of them have been using you, but we can fix this, together. He sank further into the couch, defeated. I drank tonight, Dad. I tried to numb it, but it only made me feel worse. Pride, humiliation, it's too much. I tightened my grip. I know, son, I know, but this is where it changes. This is the moment you stop letting them dictate your life. Aaron looked up at me, tears glistening in his eyes. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, I said firmly. You just needed to see the truth. That's all. And now that you have, nothing can stop you from taking back your life. He nodded slowly, a flicker of determination returning, but I could sense the storm brewing outside our little room, the repercussions of him finally seeing through the lies. Because I knew Charles, and I knew as soon as he realized Aaron's loyalty was wavering, he wouldn't sit quietly. He would strike, he would try to tighten his grip, to remind Aaron that he still held all the power. And that, my friends, is the moment everything began to shift. My son was starting to fight for himself, and I was right there beside him. But we both understood, this was only the beginning. There were battles ahead, lies to unmask, and a father and son who had to stand together against the people who had tried to destroy them. Aaron finally leaned back, exhausted, yet something had changed in his eyes. A spark, a realization that he wasn't alone, that his father, the man he had once doubted, was still in his corner, ready to help him reclaim what was rightfully his. And deep down, I knew once Aaron realized his own strength, nothing could stop him, not Rachel, not Charles, and not the walls of deceit they had built around him. The night was dark, but for the first time in a long time there was hope in our little living room. The next morning, the news hit Aaron like a punch to the gut. Charles had frozen his business shares. Every investment, every plan Aaron had worked on, it was all locked, inaccessible, financial ruin, and I could see the despair in his eyes before he even spoke. They've taken everything, Dad, he whispered, voice breaking. I'm nothing without him. I could barely hold back my anger. Charles had always been cruel, but this was beyond manipulation. This was total control. And Rachel, she wasn't helping. She stood there, arms crossed, her expression cold and unyielding. You're useless without my father's support, Aaron, she said, her words slicing through the air like a blade. Maybe now you'll finally understand your place. Aaron sank into the chair, shame written across his face. I felt my heart tighten. My son, the same boy who once stood tall beside me, was crumbling under the weight of their power. Dad, I don't know what to do, he admitted, voice barely audible. I thought I could handle this. I thought I could be independent, but I was wrong. I need you. I pulled him close, resting my hand on his shoulder. Aaron, look at me. You're not weak. You've just been trapped in their world for too long. That ends now. We'll fix this, but it won't be easy. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes, though still shadowed by shame. You'll help me. I'll be with you every step, I said firmly, but this time we fight smart. We don't let Charles and Rachel manipulate us again. We take back control, piece by piece. For the first time in months, I saw a spark of determination in him, not the blind obedience he had shown before, but a willingness to fight for his life and his dignity. And I knew we had to act fast. That's when Olivia stepped in. She had been silent until now, but she handed me a folder thick with documents, internal memos, contracts, emails, proof of Charles's hidden accounts and fraudulent deals. She had risked everything to get them to us. This is everything, she said quietly. If we play this right, Charles can't touch you, Aaron. But be careful, he trusts no one anymore. He'll know if we move too fast. I studied the papers, my mind racing. This was our chance to dismantle his empire, to take back what was rightfully ours. But it would take patience, strategy, and absolute focus. I looked at Aaron and saw the man he could become, the man Laura would have wanted him to be. He met my gaze, and in that moment I knew he finally understood. Power could be stolen, manipulated, and used against you. But truth and courage could dismantle it, brick by brick. As we started to make our plan, I couldn't shake a gnawing thought. Charles had always been clever, always 2 steps ahead, and now, I had a feeling he already suspected something. The way he looked at Olivia the last time, the way he questioned her loyalty, he would act, and soon. Aaron took a deep breath, straightening in his chair. Then we start. No more waiting, Dad. Let's take back what's ours. I nodded, pride swelling despite the tension. My son, humbled, but no longer broken, was finally ready to fight for his life. Together we would tear Charles's empire apart, and this time he wouldn't see it coming. The storm was gathering, but for the first time, I felt confident. We had the truth, we had each other, and soon, Charles would learn that underestimating the Graysons had been his biggest mistake. The morning Aaron woke to find a stack of legal papers on a kitchen table. His face went pale. Rachel had filed for divorce. Not just that, she demanded half of everything Aaron still had left. Half. I could see him trembling, hands shaking as he picked up the documents. Dad, she wants everything, he whispered, voice barely steady. Everything I've worked for, she wants it all. I felt my chest tighten. I had prepared for Charles, for manipulation, for lies, but Rachel's move cut differently. She wasn't hiding behind her father this time. She was attacking Aaron directly, stripping him of his dignity and painting him as weak, unstable, even abusive. Later that day, news spread. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives whispered behind our backs. Rachel had made sure everyone believed her version. She painted Aaron as a man out of control, a husband unworthy of love. And the worst part, some people were starting to believe her. I found Aaron sitting on the floor of his study, head in his hands. I knelt beside him, putting a steady hand on his shoulder. Aaron, look at me. Listen, none of this is true. None of it. He looked up, eyes red and glazed with tears. Dad, I feel destroyed. Everywhere I turn, she's there, tearing me down. I don't know how to fight this. My heart ached, seeing him so broken. For a moment, doubt crept in. Could we really turn this around? Could we reclaim what Rachel and Charles were trying to steal? Then Olivia's voice came through, firm and sharp. Daniel, you have the evidence. If you wait any longer, you'll lose everything. Now is the time to act. I looked at Aaron, watching him sit slumped, exhausted, almost defeated. I felt a surge of determination I hadn't realized I still had. I straightened my back, clenched my fists, and told myself, this is it. The final strike. No more waiting. I began organizing the documents, emails and files Olivia had risked so much to get us. Every hidden transaction, every manipulation, every fraudulent deal was ready to be exposed. I could feel the power shifting, slowly but surely, from them to us. Aaron finally lifted his head, catching my gaze. Dad, are we really going to do this? Yes, Aaron, I said, voice firm. We're taking back everything. You're not just a victim, you're my son, and we're going to show them that they can't control you, they can't break you, and they can't win. For the first time in weeks, I saw a spark in him. He straightened in his chair, taking a shaky but determined breath. I knew it would take every ounce of courage and strategy to fight Rachel and Charles, but now we were ready. But just as hope began to bloom, a shadow of unease passed over me. Word had reached me that Charles was already moving behind the scenes, bribing key officials to bury the investigation. They were trying to strike first, to silence the truth before we could expose it. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, drawing in a steadying breath. Let them try. They had underestimated us before. They would underestimate us again. And this time I would make sure every move we made left them powerless. Aaron looked at me, fear and hope tangled in his eyes. Dad, I'm scared, he admitted. I know, son, I said softly. But fear doesn't win. Courage does, and together, we're unstoppable. The pieces were in place. The time for patience was over. Rachel's ruthless move had shaken us, but it had also set the stage for the reckoning that was coming. And when it came, nothing would be left standing in their favor. The morning of the trial, I felt a mixture of fear and resolve. Weeks of planning, collecting evidence, and staying silent had led to this moment. Aaron and I walked into the federal building with Peter by our side. Olivia had already arrived, her eyes determined, ready to testify. We didn't wait for anyone else. We went straight to the investigators, bypassing the local officials Charles had bribed. I handed over every piece of evidence, documents, emails, and financial records that clearly showed his schemes. Peter guided us through each step, making sure nothing was missed. I glanced at Aaron. His shoulders were tense, but there was a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen in weeks. He looked at me and whispered, "Dad, this feels real. We're actually doing this." "Yes, son, it's real, and it's about time." The courtroom was packed the next day. Charles and Rachel sat smugly, confident that their influence would protect them. But that confidence would crumble. Olivia went first. She told the court about Charles's hidden dealings, his manipulation, and how he had used Rachel to control Aaron. Her voice was steady, her words precise. The evidence she presented was undeniable. Then came Aaron. He stood tall, speaking from his heart. "I was blinded," he admitted. "I thought I was making my own choices, but I was being controlled. Rachel wasn't my wife. She was a pawn in her father's game. And I lost sight of who I really am." I felt tears sting my eyes, but I held my composure. Watching my son reclaim his voice was worth every sleepless night and every moment of doubt. As Aaron spoke, the courtroom shifted. Whispers filled the room. People could see the cracks in Rachel's story. Her confident mask faltered. Every lie she had spun to paint Aaron as weak, unstable, or abusive started falling apart. I watched as her face drained of color. She realized she couldn't hide the truth any longer. Charles's smirk vanished too, replaced by thinly veiled panic. The judge listened carefully, reviewing the evidence. When he finally addressed the court, it was clear that justice had found its way. Charles was arrested on multiple charges: fraud, racketeering, and coercion. He tried to argue, but the evidence was overwhelming. Rachel sat in shock, realizing that her schemes, her lies, and her attempts to manipulate Aaron were all exposed. She was publicly disgraced, her reputation in tatters. Aaron leaned toward me, relief in his eyes. "Dad, we did it. We really did it." I put my arm around him. "Yes, son, we did. And this isn't just about winning, it's about reclaiming your life and your dignity." Even as the court cleared the charges against us, the judge reminded everyone that Rachel's divorce claims would be decided soon. It was a small lingering tension, but it didn't matter. The larger victory, the truth coming out and Charles being held accountable, was ours. As we left the courtroom, the sun shining on our faces, I felt Laura's presence. Her strength, her wisdom, and her unwavering sense of justice had guided us every step of the way. And for the first time in months, I felt a calm, a deep certainty that right had won over deception. Aaron squeezed my hand. "I'll never let anyone control me like that again." I smiled, proud and relieved. "Good. Remember, son, family isn't just blood. It's trust, love, and standing by each other no matter what." For the first time, the weight of betrayal lifted. The fight had been hard, painful, and emotional, but it was finally over. And the victory was sweeter, because it was earned the right way. The day of the final ruling arrived. I could hardly believe it after all the battles, the sleepless nights, and the heartbreak we had endured. The courtroom was tense, but there was a strange calm in me. I had done everything I could to protect Aaron and honor Laura's memory. The judge announced the verdict. Rachel's divorce claims were thrown out completely. She left the courtroom with nothing, her proud posture crumbling as whispers followed her out. I watched her go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and pity. She had built her life on manipulation, lies, and greed, and none of it worked in the end. Aaron sat beside me, a weight lifted from his shoulders. He was finally free from Rachel, from Charles, from the invisible chains that had trapped him for so long. I could see the relief in his eyes, the first real smile in months. And then came the news about Charles. The judge sentenced him for fraud, racketeering, and coercion. His empire, years of scheming, power, and control, was destroyed. The man who had manipulated and threatened my son was finally facing the consequences of his actions. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt Laura's presence beside me. It was as if she whispered, "Justice is served." I could almost hear her soft laugh, telling me she was proud of what we had achieved. Aaron turned to me, his voice shaking. "Dad, I'm sorry for everything. I was blind. I didn't see what was happening, and I let them control me. Please forgive me." I put my hand on his shoulder. My heart ached for him. The pain he had endured, the shame he carried. Aaron, I forgive you. But remember, family isn't given, it's chosen every day. You have to choose the right people, and more importantly, you have to choose yourself. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I promise, Dad, I'll rebuild my life, with honesty, integrity, and the lessons I've learned. As we walked out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't felt in months. The fight had been long, painful, and emotionally draining, but it was over. We had faced betrayal, manipulation, and loss, and we had survived. I looked at Aaron and felt hope for the first time in a long while. He had been humbled, broken even, but he was strong enough now to start over. And as for me, I could finally breathe, knowing that Laura's memory was honored, and that her son was safe from the people who had tried to destroy him. In that moment, I reflected on everything we had endured, the lies, the schemes, the betrayal, and the anger. I realized something important: love can blind, power can corrupt, but truth always waits for its moment to rise, and rise it did. Aaron squeezed my hand, and I knew we were ready for whatever came next. Not as victims, but as a family that had been tested, scarred, and ultimately stronger. And so, our story ended not in revenge alone, but in justice, closure, and a hard-earned lesson about family, loyalty, and the power of truth. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.